everybody, it's Romania Black, and yeah, I couldn't wait. I watched Blue Lock episode 13 the other day, and I was like, no, I need to know what happens. I need to know more about the aftermath of Batra being gone. Batra is gone from the group. What do we do about it? How is I'm not really worried about Nagi so much. Nagi just left Rayo behind a few episodes ago. Nagi's fine. I'm sure Nagi's gonna handle this great, but Isagi? That might be a very different story. So that's what this episode's all about. It's about how do we pick up the pieces? How do we move on? They've got to face another two-person team that lost one of their 3 players. So there's going to be a lot of desperation, I feel, now that you have 2 teams that have lost a player and are facing the threat of losing and being disqualified. Because, yeah, they have to win this next round or one of them's going to get disqualified, and we can't have that. So what do we do, right? Or will they lose? And it's like, I don't feel like Isagi is going to be, one to lose completely, but that means if they lose as a 2-person team, like that means Nagi could be gone forever. And I don't want that. We just now got to where we're learning about him. So I've got some comments before we start this episode, but I'm really excited. Last episode was rough, but you know what? As someone that's watched sports anime, I've seen some really hard moments, especially from this series right here. But I'll let you all find out about it before I dive into the comments. Have a look. Hey, everybody. This is Sawamura. And just like Isagi, Sawamura is a character that's been struggling through many different hardships throughout the series. And there's been lots of times where he's doubted himself and hasn't believed that he's as good as he truly is and hasn't lived up to his potential. So whenever you're done with Blue Lock and watching Isagi go through some really rough times, don't worry. You can also share in the existential dread of Sawamura too, and see him in all these great moments where he challenges opponents and worries about himself and his own ambitions and if he's going to become an ace of the team and if it's going to work out and if his team's going to go to nationals and all that fun stuff. So give Ace of a Diamond a try as soon as you're done with Blue Lock. Now, back to the reaction. I wasn't going to forget about it this time. I was thinking, well, you know what? Ace of the Diamond deals with a protagonist struggling really hard, so now is the opportune time to bring it up. So yeah, Ace of the Diamond, y'all. But yeah, if I can live through those arcs with that series, I can live through this, right? We'll just tell ourselves that. So yeah, I've got some comments that I want to get through and talk a little bit about some astrology things, especially going into this new revelation of Batra joining up with our crew. So fun times. Wim was talking about how there's a lot of comparisons in the fandom with Isagi to a character from My Hero Academia named Deku. Totally see that, although Deku's hair is more the same color as Reen's. But basically comparing Isagi to Deku, especially in episode 12, when Isagi was trying to calculate what percentage of power he should use for his kicks, the character Deku in My Hero Academia does something similar with percentages and things like that. And they both have kind of like a polite charm to them, both Isagi and Deku, and they both are tortured a lot in the series. So it seems pretty compatible, right? Chigiri and Kunigami's goalies, I didn't notice this, but in episode 12, during stage 1 of the second selection, Chigiri and Kunigami's goalies were bulkier than Isagi's. And I was like, oh, how interesting. And basically, I like this idea that Wim pointed out, that Ego is altering. It takes a lot of effort for Ego to alter each of the selection challenges to fit each player. But I love this idea that Wim pointed out, that Ego is trying to challenge and help their best attributes grow rather than punishing them for their weaknesses. And I'm like, yeah, Ego is eccentric. Ego is kind of a weirdo. We'll talk about Ego a little bit more here in a second with another comment, but he has the right ideas of what he wants to do, so that's fine. I like that. Nagi telling Rayo they have to separate to get stronger. I kind of pointed this out last episode, but yeah, there's this idea that, Nagi's like, Rayo, we have to go our separate ways so that we can each become stronger players. That's kind of what's happening now with Batra and Isagi. They're like, well, this didn't work out. We lost. It's basically the same speech that Nagi gave Rayo in episode 12. And he's like, we have to go separate ways. And now it's like, Isagi, you got to get stronger if you're going to catch back up with Batra. You're going to be up for it? And I think he will be. I think it's just going to, it will probably take some time before our main character gets it all together, but I'm sure that he will. Reen we were talking about the number 5 and how 5 is prevalent throughout the series. You have the 5 buildings, the 5 teams, the little pentagon that's on the soccer ball has 5 points. Reen also has 5 eyelashes. And Sai has 6. So take that for what it is. I also didn't realize this, but there's several similarities between Reen and Sai that connect to brothers in other series. So as far as the looks department goes, you could look at Reen and Sai being kind of similar to Akuya and Natsuya from Free. They both had similar eye colors, different hair colors, different features, and they have very different personalities. There's a big comparison there. But also, the voice actor of Reen is the same one as Tsukishima in Haikyuu, and the voice actor for Sai plays his brother in Haikyuu, and I was like, I don't know if I forgot that detail or if it didn't sink in, but yeah, they played brothers in Haikyuu, and now they're brothers again in this. Like, talk about typecast. I thought that was really, really cool. And then speaking of voice actors, the voice actor for Jubei, or Jujubee as I've been calling him, is the same one as Tengen from Demon Slayer. And Tengen in Demon Slayer is all like flamboyant, and then Jujubee is like glam. So I love that. And then speaking of Haikyuu, Aoshi's voice actor, total character 180. Aoshi's voice actor is the same as Yaku's in Haikyuu. Totally different character personality, just saying, but that's so wild to me. So thank you, Wim, for all of that information, right? But speaking of ego, the commenter, name, they pointed out something that I forgot from early on. I've been thinking that ego has been the one funding this whole thing. No, Henri is the one that started up the Blue Lock project. Henri is the one that is pitching the idea to the board and getting money for it. Ego's just like the hype man and the person she like brought on as a think tank, and he's taking the whole thing over. And she's like, "Wait, this is my project. I'm funding it." Ego's like, "Shut up, Henri." I'm like, "Damn it, Ego, stop! Like, you're just taking this over." He owes her a lot. I hope that he is compensating. I'm just saying. I hope that that's the case. But she loves him for whatever reason. I don't even know. So yeah. So that's interesting. And then K.A. pointed out, and I think we've said this in a previous episode, but I wanted to bring it up again, that Kunigami's voice actor was a soccer player at one time that was aspiring to be professional. So that's really, really fun. But anyway, we talked last week about the horoscopes of these characters now that we kind of know a little bit more about them. And I wanted to look into some compatibility. So I found different sites that talked about compatibility, complementary signs, and then ones that are incompatible. And I think there's some interesting things that you ought to know as we go into this episode. With Aries, I don't know a lot of Aries. Taurus and Aries are not usually compatible, which is kind of funny because we have Nagi and Isagi together, but Taurus and Aries are usually like, they don't quite get along. Huckleberry is an Aries, so take that for what you will. Ruby is an effing Libra, so she doesn't care, but we get along. But Aries are most compatible with Leos. So, Henri and Ego, most compatible. Isagi and Bachara, most compatible. So, I'm like, take that for what you will. Also, you know what sign is the least compatible with Aries? Virgo. You know who's a Virgo in this series? Reen. So, yeah, unless you're going the star-crossed lovers trope, I'm not shipping Reen with Isagi because their signs don't match at all. They're polarizing against one another. So that's fun. But speaking of Virgo, the most compatible sign with Virgo is Taurus, which is Nagi, which is kind of why I figured that they would choose Nagi, because Reen would be compatible with Nagi, but they didn't choose. Clearly, the other Aries, which is Aoshi, and the Scorpio wanted Bachara instead, so do what you will with that. Virgos are also really compatible with Capricorns, which would be Chigiri. So Chigiri and Reen might get along. I could kind of see that, I think. And then Capricorns are complemented by Pisces. And the site that I went on said that complimenting, it's not a neutral, but complimenting is like they're platonically making the other better, but it's not necessarily compatible like romantic wise. So the examples of this would be Geen, who's a Capricorn, and Naruhaya. They would be, which they're together all the time in the series, so that makes a lot of sense. And then also Chigiri and Kunigami would be compatible that way, because Kunigami's a Pisces. So I'm like, I told Wim in their comment that I don't really ship Chigiri and Kunigami that much yet. I see it, but I don't see it. I feel like the fandom has like been shoving that ship down my throat. So I'm kind of like, yeah, sure, but I'm not like totally sold on it. Whatever. But they're compatible in terms of being complementary to each other. And then I was curious about Barou, because Barou's kind of a weird sign. He's a Cancer, and there's not a lot of Cancers in this show. But this is interesting. Barou is complemented by Taurus, which would be Nagi. And I can kind of see that. I can see Nagi and Barou playing off each other really well because they're both really good. And also, they're complemented by Virgo. I could see Reen and Barou getting along great because Barou's so good, and Reen would be like, okay, sure, whatever. But then they're compatible with Pisces, which is Kunigami. And we see Kunigami and Barou, I'm pretty sure, in the new ED against one another. So make that what you will. We'll see if anything comes of that. And then I got real curious because the site that I was on didn't show in its charts Leo and Virgos, which is Barou and Nagi, and it didn't show together Taurus and Leo, or Leo and Virgo, which is Reen and Bachara, which I'm very curious about because now they're together on a team. So I went to look this up, and I found that Taurus and Leo, which would be Barou and Nagi, I went to astrology.com because it's the main site for horoscopes, so I went there for my info. And it says, when Taurus and Leo come together in a love affair, they can be a great couple because they know how to stroke each other's egos and love to have their own stroked. Get your minds out of the gutter. They have similar needs. Taurus needs plenty of affection to be loved and cherished, while Leo likes compliments and wants to be adored and admired. Since they have similar desires, they generally can provide for one another's needs quite well. So basically, what's best about their relationship is their mutual admiration. Both signs have very powerful personalities, so neither will dominate the other, no matter how hard they try. Others see them as an excellent match as they share the commitment to fulfilling their goals. I'm like, that's basically Rio and Nagi in a nutshell. So yes, I believe that just perfectly outlines why they would be a great couple. And so the compatibility works. Nice. But Leo and Virgo is interesting, which would be Bachara and Reen, since they're now on a team together. And it says that when Virgo and Leo join together, they may initially overlook common interests and feel they have nothing to gain from one another, which is kind of how it seems at the end of the episode. It says, although there are differences, they can make a wonderful match when each partner warms up to the other's unfamiliar style. So it could be that Bachara and Reen warm up to each other and get to know each other, but they're going to be at odds at first because the signs are kind of mismatched and don't quite fit together, right? And it said basically they can be effective together, which if they're on a team together in this part of the series, then sure, that would be great. Metaphorically and literally, Leo commands attention and respect by showing people what they're made of socially and following through on new ideas motivated only by fun and excitement. That is literally Bachara to a T. Like, Bachara is such a Leo. I love it. Virgo works hard behind the scenes, which we talked about last week with Reen's backstory, possibly. Scheduling appointments and following up on details that Leo has lost interest in. Their personalities, opposite in so many ways, makes theirs a highly complementary match. So they could work together really well, but I don't know about, like, romance-wise, they're a bit at odds. So, which seems appropriate for the series. I'm just saying, I'm going to guess that this mangaka has done their horoscope research because so far the matches line up really well. You know, some mangaka just pick random birthdays and they're like, yeah, just give them this birthday, it sounds good. Or they could be like Oda in One Piece that just chooses a random birthday and they're like, yeah, you guys decide. But here I think the mangaka has done a little bit of work to match with the characters' personalities, which I find very fascinating. So So I appreciate those comments. Thank you all so much. But yeah, episode 14, y'all. We're going to have fun with that. So we're not going to waste any more time. I've talked enough. We're going to dive into episode 14 of Blue Lock and see what we get. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, let me tell y'all, when sports anime decide to get to this part of the arcs, it is rough, and Isagi is going through it. He is going through it. Oh my god, I didn't bring my board count out this episode because there's not as much there's not as much calculations to do, but I did not expect Barou to be with Naruhaya of all people. Didn't expect that. I didn't expect Naruhaya to be such a bastard either with his caramel aura. And so we're going to talk about that. My thoughts, my theories. But we all knew this day was coming, that Isagi was going to go through, Isagi going through the stereotypical sports protagonist, like, angsty arc, where he's just like, I don't think I'm good enough. But damn, he went really hardcore in this. Isagi thinks so low of himself and so little that I'm glad that Nagi brings it up and communicates with him, but it's just not clicking with Isagi. And I'm like, come on, dude. Which I've dealt with some pretty low of lows with characters before, so would not be the first time. But man, we really set up, I like that at this point, Isagi's not even like, I don't want to be Japan's next top striker, but I gotta get back to Bachira. It's great. So I didn't realize from the last episode that this is now the OP. Fun times. Barou and Naruhaya, so we don't know about Chigiri, we don't know about Kunigami yet, which is fun, but obviously the answer is that they're gonna beat Barou and Naruhaya, right? They're gonna beat them, and they're gonna pick Barou, is what's gonna happen. They're gonna pick Barou, but that's gonna open up a whole world of problems, right? They're not gonna pick Naruhaya because Naruhaya is a big bully and was talking shit about Isagi, so I ain't gonna pick him. So there's a lot of things that are interesting about this scenario, because we have this scenario of, okay, well, if they beat Naruhaya and Barou, which they have to, because at this point the rule was if you get down to 2 people and you lose again, the one that's not picked is kicked out of Blue Lock. So that means that if they lose, they're going to have to pick between Isagi and Nagi. Both Barou and Naruhaya have decided they want Nagi. They don't want Isagi. So if they lose, Isagi's out of Blue Lock, which that would make this a very short series, and I don't think we're switching perspectives, right? So with that being said, that we, the audience, know that somehow Isagi is going to have to pull it together and be able to beat Naruhaya, because they're kind of at a standstill. Nagi and Barou are both good competitors. They have their own style, their own ways, and I love how Nagi is evolving as the episodes are going on. It's great, but now Isagi has to evolve too. And I really like all the things they address in this episode, because there are things, some of the things I didn't even think about. I was like, oh yeah, that is something we have to bring up now, that it's just, the fact that it's just 2-on-2 makes it very interesting. Like, I didn't realize how much of a difference that third player makes. Because yeah, you often have that third player that can break away from the group and kind of like swoop in and do these crazy plays. When it's just 2-on-2, it really is a lot more of an intimate battle. And if 2 of you are at a stalemate, it comes down to those other ones, which in this case are Naruhaya and Isagi. Now, I think that Isagi and Nagi are going to find a way to pull it off, whether it's by the skin of their teeth. I'm sure it'll be, but they're going to find a way to pull it off, and they're going to win. And obviously they're not going to pick Naruhaya because they want to pick the strongest player to advance through. Although Barou is a big gamble. He is a loose cannon, and we talk about egoist versus egotist. Barou's kind of, to me, on the edge, where it's not even, the thing about it is, I feel like Barou and Rin, you compare those two characters, Rin has the talent to back up him not needing Aoshi or Jujubee. Rin can do it. He's got the skills to back it up. Barou does not. Barou is insanely strong. He's the king. But as we saw him miss this one goal, Reen has perfected his shots. He doesn't need them. Barou is not at that point yet. He's still evolving. He's getting better, but he's not perfect, right? So I feel like Barou wants to talk the talk and walk the walk, but he's like 90% there. And so, and the fact that Barou, I feel like Reen is okay working with others in matches if it is required. He just doesn't have to. Reen is like, what's hilarious is Reen is like the embodiment of what Ego wants in terms of talent, but then personality and feelings towards Blue Lock, Ego's like, you don't appreciate what we've put together. And Reen's like, no. So also, I thought about this the other day. I was like, if Reen really is as good as he says he is, I'm like, then why is he even Blue Lock to begin with? You know, why isn't he already at that precipice? But I'm sure we'll cover it when we get to Reen's backstory. We're going to put him over here right now. We'll get to him later. We'll talk about him in the additional time. But I feel like Barou, on the one hand, is a very strong player that you'd want to have on your side. You'd want him as a friend more than a foe, but he's such a loose cannon and he doesn't cooperate or work well with others that it's, I mean, he does work okay with Naruhaya only because he feels like it's necessary. But even then he asked Naruhaya to pass it back, and I'm kind of glad Naruhaya said no. Like, you're at the goal. Why would he pass it back to you? So, but Barou needs to learn to work with others, and that's kind of the gamble that you take if you pick him up on your team. So that's going to be interesting. But I like Barou, and I want more of him. I think the reason why, I'm sure a bunch of people will be asking, well, why can you tolerate Barou and like him as a character, but not like Reen? And I feel like because Barou is so straightforward, and Barou's not trying to hide anything. Barou, what you see is what you get. Barou's like, he can be arrogant, he can be loud, he can be abrasive, he can be grumbly, but he's not, I think it's the reason why, which is hilarious, because Suabe voices Almine in Kuroko's Basketball. Almine and Barou are very similar characters, right? The only one who can beat me is me. And that's Barou and that's Almine, and Suabe voices both of them. I think that's why I like his character so much, because it's what you see is what you get. There's no manipulation. There's no, like, putting on all these masks and everything. It's just, no, this is him. And there's stuff under the surface there that makes him a deeper character, I'm sure. But it's not like he's putting on airs or trying to hide something or project something that's not true. Whereas Reen kind of gives me more Akashi vibes, and I was like, with Akashi, again, I'm gonna hold off my views entirely until we get more with him. We'll see. But yeah. I like the star-shaped room that they go into in the second stage. This whole entire layout, I feel like Henri designed it, but it's the matchup room. So it's where you guys they can rest, they can practice, they get 24 hours before they enter the next stage, which resting is important. I'm glad they at least do a little of it because they're going to need it to advance on. Now, we talked before starting this episode that Aries and Tauruses are not very compatible. And we kind of get that in this opening scene where Isagi is just so down on himself. Isagi brings up the point of saying that both him and Nagi, they've always needed people to pass to them to really shine their hardest. And now it's like it's like kind of like a battery has a positive and a negative, and you have to stick those positive negatives up to each other to make them work. Now you have both Isagi and Nagi who are like two positives, and they just they can't gel, right? The chemical reaction doesn't work because neither of them are the ones passing to the other like they would be if Bachira or Rhea were there. So I'm glad they bring it up. It's really fun that they bring it up, but I'm also glad that Nagi kind of addresses, like, Isagi, why are you being this way? Because Isagi is at a really low point. He has this low self-esteem. He thinks that he's, like, one of the worst, which is so... What's frustrating is that, yeah, Isagi started second to last. Like, Inagashi was, like, the only one below him. But he worked up to be, like, one of the top ranked in his team. So, like, Isagi, you're not that bad. But he's so convinced that he is. And it's very frustrating because you're just like, you want to shake him? And so as a Taurus, I just definitely, like, empathize and feel Nagi when he grabs him by the hair and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, thank you, Nagi. I'm with him on that. The Taurus energy in me is like, yes, good job. And I think that Nagi brings up great points. He's like, you scored a goal against him. And then Isagi's doing this little sad sport where he's like, well, but it was not just because of me. It was because of others. And Nagi's like, the fudge. And I love that Nagi says, I wanted you on my team because I thought you would make us better. Like, quit being down on yourself. You were clearly wanted. What I really want is for Nagi's words to come back in the next episode, because Isagi's over here saying, I have no weapon to fight with, and Naruhaya has done all this bullying, being like, you're the weakest link, Isagi, nobody wants you. And Isagi's like, oh no. And then here's Nagi being like, I'm one of the strongest players in this competition. Bachira is one of the strongest players in this competition. We both wanted you. The fudge are you doing? I need Nagi's words to come back. And I like that Nagi, in true Taurus fashion, just grabs him by the hair. And he's like, look, because Isagi says, if we lose the next one, I'm going to lose you, Nagi. And Nagi's like, I'm not going to get chosen. And if I were in their place, I wouldn't take me either. And I like Nagi's like, okay, this sad sport, this needs to stop. This whole pity party needs to come to a conclusion real quick. He's like, I teamed up with you because I thought doing so would make me stronger. So just quit acting negative. I'm like, what a Taurus. What a thing to do. I'm all for it. I'm like, thank you, sir. Get a grip, Baka. I know. Isagi needs to get a grip. And I love that in true Aries fashion, Isagi's like, why are you throwing it back at me? And I'm like, because you started this. Again, Aries and Taurus don't really gel very well, so I appreciate the realism in this scene and how it just showcases them side by side, but then they have to work together, right? And then when he says, go team up with Rayo, and Nagi's like, well, I did this to get better. And Rayo Nagi spitting the facts. Nagi saying, I needed to get away from Rayo to get better. He's like, and Isagi's like, I'm frustrated. And he's like, what's wrong with that guy? And then I'm glad Isagi says, I'll prove that I can fight without Bachira. And in true Taurus fashion, Nagi's like, oh, okay, we're done now? Great, cool. Let's get back to the plot. Glad we took that little detour. Because Nagi's like, that's kind of the point of this, is that the first stage was all showing how you were strong enough as a group to make goals. That was what needed to be proven. And now that we're in the second stage, okay, you could work with a team. Congratulations. You were able to create a chemical reaction as a group. Awesome. But now we need you to act individually so that you can be strong enough to work with any team given to you. And I like Nagi's explanation that now, instead of having a bunch of people to work off of, where you can kind of make the links more apparent, there's only 2 of you now, so you've got to figure out real quickly, like, what do you have to do? Your individual skills matter more in this stage than they did in the last. The 2-on-2 battles are very stressful. They're very, like, anxiety-ridden for a reason, and the stakes are really, really high. When you're doing the 3-on-3 battles, it doesn't feel like the stakes are nearly as there as this one. This is, like, the end of the line. If you fail, bye. So basically, Naruhaya is going bye after this, which is absolutely insane. And I'll be honest, my theory about Naruhaya leaving, him holding up that little caramel card and everything, that just feels like sudden backstory syndrome. That just feels like a little foreshadowing of sudden backstory. Next episode, maybe it's the episode after, I don't know for sure yet, but it's gonna be Naruhaya being like, here's my backstory and the caramel card and why it's so important and what I need to do, and then he's gonna go. So that's my prediction. That's my prediction that Naruhaya is out of here. I honestly didn't think that we would see him before we saw Chigiri and Kunigami, so that's fun. I'm interested to see if we face Chigiri and Kunigami after this. With Rayo! Oh my god! What if they win? What if they win and then they face a team of Rayo and... Well, here's the thing that's even more crazy. What if they face a team? What if Chigiri and Kunigami and Rayo lost? And let's say... Because in the OP, they show Kunigami and Barou against each other, right? They show them against each other. What if Chigiri was chosen from a team and plucked and made it to the final selection, the end of stage, the second selection. What if it's Kunigami and Reo on a team with someone else, and they have to face Barou and Nagi and Isagi to make their team of 4? What if they have to do that? And what if then, because you know that Isagi's going to want Kunigami, and you know that Nagi's going to want Reo. Oh no, this could get really bad. This could get really bad. Maybe we won't get to that point. Maybe we won't get to that point. Maybe we're going to be fine. And then what if they face the 3 of them on a team and they have to pick between the 3? Y'all, this is going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly real fast, and I ain't ready for that. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. So we're on episode 14. We have 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We have 10 episodes left. That is plenty of time to, if we win, let's say the next episode, if they win the game next episode and they have a team of 3 again, they just need to win 2 more games. That's 9 episodes for 2 games. You could totally do that. So we could make it past the second selection by the end of this season, potentially. But I don't know if we will or not. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. This is going to get interesting. So, yeah. And then I like that Nagi doesn't give up on Isagi either. He keeps trying to help Isagi. Like, Nagi is not a mean character. Nagi is surprisingly very compassionate and very warm, even though he's just aloof and kind of like absent-minded sometimes. Like, if it were Rin or Barou, they would have just let Isagi wallow in his pity and wouldn't be trying to help him. But Nagi is actively trying to be like, hey, we can't get out of this unless we work together, so let's do something about this. We have to individually be strong enough. And Isagi's like, okay. And then poor Nagimi's like, how do you get rid of this feeling of frustration? He has like a Zantetsu vibe where he's like, what do I do? And Isagi's like, the fudge? And he's like, unfortunately, Nagi, we have to win. That's the only way we can do it. And they're just like, eh. We talked about this in the Discord. It's like the most platonic fist bump. Usually the fist bump is like shipping, but if you ship Nagi and Isagi together, I don't judge you. I can see it. It's not for me. I like them as platonic bros, but they're both trying to get back to their romantic relationships. They're doing the best they can. But then, yeah, in comes Barou. So I like the first words out of his mouth are, if your team sucks, you get sent to this shithole. I'm like, it's literally a nicely lit room, sir. How is it different? I like the implication that maybe Henri took different parts of prisons and put together Blue Lock. I just wanted to be like repurposed prisons. That she was like, we'll spruce this up, ego. And he's like, whatever. But yeah, the fact that Barou just left Naruhaya behind and came by himself speaks volumes for Barou's mentality of just being this like isolated lone wolf. And it's like, that's great, but their team lost. I want to know who was on their team that got picked to advance. Maybe it was Reo. Who was on their team that got picked? Because when somebody got picked from their team of 3, I don't think Naruhaya says who it was. Maybe we can avoid all this and Reo got picked by another team and it'll be fine. Or maybe Barou and Naruhaya faced Chigiri and Kunigami and Reo. Whoever got picked, they didn't pick Naruhaya because he's the weakest link. And they didn't pick Barou because he's too much of a loose cannon. So someone had to be the balance. The show makes you theorize who was on the other teams that got picked, but they don't tell you. So I hope by the end of this selection, we find out like who was on what teams and how did the selection work and who got picked from other teams and how did that happen. By the end of the season, if we don't know that and we've made it to the end of the second selection, I'm probably going to be asking if there's like manga pages that explain it or something like that. But we have to get to the end of the season before we get to that point. So yeah. And then the first selection, 10 gold, Barou Shoei. Isn't there anyone strong here? I'm like, you're such a bitch! But he's so straightforward. And then, again, Isagi being like, how do I beat Barou? I like you have Isagi with the blue eyes and Barou with the red eyes. And he's like, move, donkey. Don't get in my way. And so then, yeah. And then, I didn't expect to see you here. Aren't you supposed to be the strongest? I like that Nagi just puts out the shade. Just aloof, just says that. And I love that how they face each other. Nagi's just like facing him head to head. And Barou's so mad. He says, you're only an amateur who's only good at controlling the ball. Now, see, Barou and Isagi and Nagi could be an interesting combination. And what's interesting is I love that Nagi says you bark a lot for someone who calls yourself king. And Isagi's like, don't provoke him. I like that Isagi could be the middle ground between Nagi and Barou, which usually Tauruses and Cancers get along. They just got to get used to each other first. They complement each other well. But then there's Naruhaya. I can't believe Naruhaya. What the fudge? Yeah. So it says, who's that again? Oh, he's my former teammate. So you teamed up with Barou. And he says, yes. Oh, okay. So they did have another player. Oh, Masai, who was the 29th. Okay. So here I was thinking that we could get Rayo to advance without having to face them. But it was messy. Okay. Aomori's messy. Or Masai. He was talked about earlier in the series, wasn't he? I feel like Nishioka's guy. Yeah. Okay. All right. So he is the one that got picked for another team. Whatever. He's like, we scored 4 goals, but then we lost. He's like, we lost because you two were useless. Interesting. So I like that we go to them resting in the break room for 2 people at the second stage. They have like a little water cooler in their bed. And I like that Isagi's like, well, yeah, it's kind of like a prison. It's got a cafeteria and a bath and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty simple. We haven't made it past the second selection or anything. Plus, they had to put this all together. It's, spared no expense. And so Nagi says they should pick Barou, which I think speaks a lot for Nagi because Nagi didn't initially get along with Barou, but he's like, he's the strongest. We should totally pick him. And Isagi's like, yeah, but at our current level, Isagi is just a sad sack at this episode. He's like, we're lacking. And it's really sad. He's like, our weapons don't work when we receive passes. And then in this game, Nagi figures out what to do. I love Isagi's little grunt face where he's like, I don't know. Like, his little badger face is so freaking cute. It's adorable. And the thing that makes me so frustrated is Isagi is focusing on everything that the other players have that he doesn't. He's focusing on them being quick, having long limbs, crazy physiques. He's so worried about the other players that he's not thinking about how he can make himself better. Because, like, Isagi's going through the biggest imposter syndrome right now, but it's like, you made it here. You clearly have a weapon that's useful. You can do this. You just have to think of how to improve yourself, Isagi. Quit comparing yourself to others. In RuPaul's Drag Race, you can't compare. You're being Tia Coffee right now. Quit. There's a British drag queen named Tia Coffee, and I'm watching the UK season 2 right now of Drag Queen. And in that season so far, Tia Coffee, she's like beautiful and tall, like a supermodel. But they get in their own head and they keep comparing themselves to other queens, being like, oh, they're so beautiful and I'm so blah. And one of the guest judges was like, you're great. You're here. You made it this far. Worry about yourself. Quit worrying about everybody else because you bring something to the table nobody else can bring. So focus on that. And that's what Isagi needs to do. They need to quit being Tia Coffee and just step their game up, step their pussy up, and get on in this, right? I want Isagi to just ramp up that charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. Come on. He's got charisma, uniqueness, nerve. He's just got to realize that he's got the talent. And let's go from there, please. And Nagi's just like, he's like, one-on-one, we have no hope of winning. So we just have to get to where we figure out what we're not lacking. How do we win a one-on-one without passes? And I like Nagi's like, that's hard. Nap time. I'll think some more on it tomorrow. And he does. He sleeps like a mummy. Aw, with Rayo wrapped all around him. Just works out that way. I also like that we go back to the natto and the miso soup and the rice. And I like that, Isagi's used to all that. So he's like, oh, I'm used to this food. And Isagi's like, what are you peasants? You've been eating this the whole time? Why? And so he's like, we see all the other teams. And yeah, this environment where you've lost a player and it's just down to the 2 of you, it would really put a bunch of anxiety on you and the other person, because now it's like if you lose again, one of you has to go home and get kicked out forever. So yeah, anxieties are high, and you gotta like it's kind of a damned if you do scenario. If you face the hard-hitting, difficult team like what Isagi and them just did, you could lose, and then it's bad. But if you face a weak team trying to like weasel your way out of it, then you're going to just get caught up in this loop, because you're going to keep facing bigger teams and better teams, and eventually you're going to get weeded out. So you have to take big risks for it to pay off. Otherwise, you're going to get caught up in this loop, and you eventually will probably go home. So that's so fascinating. And so I like that we get that Isagi's weapon is improving, but he's got to try to figure out how to use it on his own, how to create these experiences. And then Naruhaya shows up, this little cinnamon bun that turns out to be a freaking like sriracha-filled cinnamon roll. Like, what the fudge? He's like, we've got to take these risks. And that's when he's like, oh, well, you and me are the type of players who aren't going to get picked if we lose. I'm like, did Cone take your body? Like, Naruhaya, what are you doing? And he's like, I like that all these people that Isagi once had as teammates are slowly turning out to be like the worst. And I'm like, what? Like, what? No, Naruhaya, there's a reason you weren't allowed into the harem, that's for sure. I do like the idea that his aura is caramel colored. It's like this caramel orange. I like that. That's really cool. And then when he says like our dreams are at stake, and gets the crazy look in his eyes, like the fudge, the crazy like Cone look. And then Isagi's like, well, I wanted to play you guys too. And so I just want Isagi to like pull it together. I want him to pull it together. They clearly can beat Naruhaya. He's number 38. Come on, get it together. Barou's 18. They've got him outranked. Like, come on now. So in any case, we have this. We see Naruhaya, and he picks up this little card and holds it, and it says, "You can do it, best." So is that from Gin? Did Gin give that to him? Did Gin give that to him when he didn't make it? Did Gin not make it to the second selection? To the second stage? He says, I don't want it to end yet. Because it says, yeah, it says Caramel Dorguba. Who gave him the damn card? His hand is blocking who the card is from. That's going to come into play. And I think it's going to be next episode when it's revealed. But I don't want Naruhaya to advance. Obviously. I think it's going to be Barou that's picked. But I love that Barou and Nagi are on very opposite ends of the scale. I feel like Barou would be shirts out, guns out, veins out, like just constantly in a state of anger. And Nagi's just like, eh. I love them both on different levels, but I ain't got time for shady bitches. And Naruhaya is being a shady bitch. So no, ain't got no time for that. And then even though Barou's arrogant, he's not shady about it. He's just being honest, you know, whatevers. And then Isagi just trying to figure out what to do. And Nagi, I love that we see how Nagi has figured out how to get around Barou. We see his strategy where he's like excellent control, which is what Nagi has, the opponent behind him, and the impossible to predict. That makes his formula. It's perfect for Nagi. Perfect. I just need Isagi to figure out what he's doing, right? I love the black hole breakdown. It's so good. It's like such a cool little title for his move. And the idea of Nagi being a black hole is very, very fitting, right? Very, very fitting. But then Naruhaya just trying to play the mind games, right? That's what sucks the most. We saw that with Chigiri and his former teammates trying to play the mind games, right? We saw that. And now we're seeing it with Naruhaya trying to play mind games with Isagi. And I'm like, leave him alone. Leave our boy alone. Just let him be. He'll figure it out. I really like when Barou gets super pissed and he goes to take the shot. I love everybody's reactions. Like Isagi has the, oh shit. Nagi's like the, like barely noticing. But I really like Naruhaya's face. Naruhaya's face is like I've seen this before and it was not pretty. I really like his expression in that little trifold panel. And then Barou needs to control his blood pressure or it's going to give him problems later on. But he misses the goal, which shows that he's not quite on Reen's level. He has potential. Barou could get there, but he's still like just not quite controlled enough. He's like a loose cannon. And Reen is like, he's like a loose cannon that is powerful, but just doesn't have the right accuracy. And Reen is like a sniper rifle, is basically the difference between them at this point. Right? And then Naruhaya. I'm like, Isagi, do not let Naruhaya show you up. That bitch did nothing. Like the entirety of the first selection. Do not let him show you up with his words, right? And I like that Naruhaya's like, well, we know all your moves because we've been watching you. You can't do it by yourself. You can't score a goal by yourself, unlike Kunigami, Chigiri, and Bachira, the other members of your harem, or like Nagi, the other new member of your harem. So I'm gonna beat you. And I'm like, leave him alone. I'm just like, why? And Naruhaya just takes the shot for himself. I do like Naruhaya when he says he's like, Barou and Nagi are prodigies. They're geniuses. They are like so talented and geniuses. And he says, you and I are average Joes. And I want to catch up with you geniuses. But here's the thing. He tells Isagi that Isagi is an average Joe. He says, Isagi, you and I are average Joes. But when he takes the ball from Barou to score the goal for himself, he says, I want to catch up with you geniuses. So he's lying to Isagi because I was like, Isagi's a genius. He just doesn't realize he's a genius. He just hasn't figured it out yet. But Naruhaya knows that he is, but he also knows that Isagi is a baka who has low self-esteem and doesn't realize he's a genius, so he's trying to play mind games with him. And I'm like, ah! So while I appreciate Naruhaya's efforts to catch up to them, I do not want Naruhaya to advance. He's like, and then the fact that Isagi says, I can't even beat Naruhaya, I'm like, oh, Isagi, why? I need Isagi to pull it together. I need him to pull it together next episode, if you could, please. I would like for you to pull it together, please. That'd be amazing. Thank you, sir. Now, I want to talk about, and yeah, as he shoots the ball, it's so frustrating because I'm sure they're going to score a goal and it's going to be 3-2. Get it to frick together. So I want to talk about the extra time. I like that they're the rooms that they are in where they currently are, the top three. I like it's called the top three in Bachira. So once you advance on to playing teams of 4, you get nicer beds. You get your own individual bed. There's a TV in there. Great amenities for you. I really like the camaraderie that Aoshi and Jujubee are forming with Bachira. It's super cute. Of course, Aoshi would freak out seeing Bachira naked. And I like that Bachira's like, he's like, as a human being, I return to the state of my birth. It's only natural that I walk around naked. Got a problem with it? And like, Aoshi's like, oh my gosh, I'm so insecure. Oh no. I love that Jujubee is just like, sir, as glam as that is. He's like, I know Aoshi says, I thought I could make a new friend, but it turns out he's another weirdo. I'm like, you're a weirdo, Aoshi. What the fudge? And then Jujubee is like, hey, naked guy. And he's like, what's up? He's like, I acknowledge your free spirit, Aryu says, but at least cover up in front. No. What? I love this. I love that Aryu is just like, I appreciate you being a progressive free spirit, but do you mind putting some clothes on? And Bachira's probably like, no, you could be naked too. And he's like, I'll punish you for glam indecent exposure. And I love Bachira's like, oh, sorry, but it feels good, you know? Want to give it a try? And I just love the fact that Jujubee, he said last episode, he was like, I disapprove. I am here. Now he's like, I undress. Like, no. Bachira and Jubei, Aryu, their friendship, I love it. It's magical. Their energy is synchronized. It's beautiful. It's like Lady Gaga. It's magnificent, beautiful, brilliant. I love their chemistry. And you can play off of them both being, it's like Bachira is just, he eggs on Jujubee's like insanely flamboyant attitude and just fans the flames, and it's amazing. And then Aoshi is the best person to react off of them because he doesn't know what to do, so he just freaks out. And then Reen is over here being a dumb party pooper that's just like, what a bunch of weirdos. You're a weirdo! So I freaking love it. Is anyone normal in this room? And they're like, you're one to talk. Yeah. Like Reen. I'm like, come on, Reen, lighten up. They're having a lot of fun getting to know each other and be friends. You could lighten up, Reen. Come on. Just give in a little bit. Quit being the handsomest man in the room. It's super cute. I really like Bachira and Jubei's relationship. And then Aoshi is a fun little, like, compliment to that. And then Reen's just like, grumpy cat. Grumpy cat, but what can we do? So, oh, y'all, I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait. I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll. I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait to see episode 15. I want to know if they're going to beat Naruhaya, and I want to find this out. So I make no guarantees whether or not I wait for comments or if I go ahead and watch the next episode. My goal for the year to start out next year is to get a couple episodes ahead. That's my goal. So we'll see if that ends up happening or not. But yeah. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And I look forward to hear your comments down below. But I will see you all again real soon with episode 15 of Blue Lock. See you then!